Minutes ago, WWE sent shockwaves through the wrestling world by releasing never-before-seen photos showing Roman Reigns being rushed to the hospital after a brutal backstage altercation with longtime rival Seth Rollins. The photos are jarring, raw, and haunting, exposing the physical toll of a rivalry that has spiraled out of control. What began as a wrestling storyline has now exploded into something far more visceral, real, and dangerous. And tonight, fans are left asking, what really happened between these two former brothers? It was supposed to be a routine Monday Night Raw. The crowd in Phoenix, Arizona, was electric. The energy was high, with fans anticipating a big announcement from Seth Rollins regarding his new faction's direction following Money in the Bank. Roman Reigns hadn't been seen in weeks. There were rumors of an injury. Whispers of backstage tension. But no one expected what unfolded behind closed doors just hours before showtime. At exactly 6:47 p.m. WWE security footage captured a chaotic scene in one of the restricted backstage corridors near the production trucks. The area, usually off-limits to cameras and crew, became the epicenter of a savage brawl. According to initial eyewitness accounts from WWE staff and tech crew, shouting could be heard echoing through the hallways, two male voices locked in a war of words. One voice, unmistakably intense, belonged to Seth Rollins. The other, more grounded but equally furious, was none other than Roman Reigns. What triggered the confrontation remains unclear. Some insiders say Roman had returned to the arena to confront Paul Heyman and get answers about the growing rift within the Bloodline. Others claim Roman was simply there to check on Jey Uso, who had suffered a beatdown at the hands of Rollins' faction the previous week. Either way, what started as a verbal clash escalated with terrifying speed. Minutes after the shouting began, several loud crashes rang out. The sound of steel clanging, crates toppling, and glass shattering startled nearby crew members. A producer, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said, "It didn't sound like a wrestling angle. This was different. This was personal." The producer immediately radioed for security. But by the time they arrived, the damage was done. WWE's official press release was terse. Roman Reigns was injured in a backstage altercation prior to tonight's show. He was transported to a nearby medical facility. We will provide further updates as they become available. But the photos tell a story that words never could. The first image, released just before midnight Eastern Time, shows Roman Reigns slumped against a loading dock wall, blood trickling down from a gash near his hairline. His face is pale, his lips slightly parted as if struggling to catch his breath. A second photo captures EMTs kneeling beside him, checking his vitals while security attempts to clear the area. There's a visible indentation in the steel barricade next to him, possibly where his body impacted during the fight. Debris is scattered across the concrete floor, overturned equipment, shattered monitor screens, and a shattered clipboard belonging to a production assistant who was nearly caught in the chaos. But it's the third image that's arguably the most haunting. Roman's hand is curled around a torn piece of his own vest, his wrist trembling as medics lift him onto a stretcher. His tribal chief insignia is smeared with blood. His mouth is moving, but the audio from the footage is muted. Some claim he was whispering Seth's name. Others say he was asking for Paul Heyman. The WWE Universe erupted online within seconds of the images being leaked. #Roman Hospitalized trended worldwide. Fans, superstars, and media alike flooded Twitter and Instagram with tributes, speculation, and outrage. "This is beyond storyline," tweeted one veteran wrestling journalist. Roman Reigns is not just a character. He's the backbone of WWE. And this feels like a fracture in that very spine. Backstage, the mood was chaotic. Reports suggest Triple H was seen pacing furiously in the gorilla position, speaking rapidly into a headset while coordinating with security and medical personnel. Paul Heyman, meanwhile, was reportedly in tears. A source claims he refused to leave the arena, demanding to ride in the ambulance with Roman but was denied due to procedural restrictions. Heyman's relationship with Roman has long been a mix of strategist and surrogate father figure. Tonight, he looked broken. As for Seth Rollins, his status remains murky. Some say he vanished from the arena shortly after the incident. Others insist he returned to his dressing room and continued preparing for the show as if nothing had happened. When asked for comment during the live broadcast, Seth's faction delivered only a cryptic promo: "What happens when a king falls? You rise. And tonight, we rise higher than ever." The crowd jeered, but the arena had already shifted in tone. Something felt off, too real, too raw. Fans weren't sure what they were watching anymore. According to emergency dispatch logs obtained by insiders, the call from WWE's internal medical team went out at 6:54 p.m. described as a level 2 trauma. Roman's injuries included a head wound, suspected concussion, and visible bruising along his ribs. By 7:13 p.m., he was en route to the Honor Health Deer Valley Medical Center. Police did not respond, as the incident is being classified internally as a company matter. But sources close to WWE's legal team say there are discussions ongoing about whether charges could be filed, and against whom. One insider close to WWE's medical staff confirmed Roman was conscious upon arrival at the hospital but barely responsive. He was reportedly muttering something repeatedly under his breath. "It's mine. He stole it. It's mine." Doctors sedated him for further evaluation and administered emergency scans to assess neurological trauma. As of the latest update, Roman is in stable condition but will remain under observation for at least 48 hours. No official diagnosis has been released. Fans outside the hospital have begun gathering. Despite heavy security, several were seen holding signs that read #PrayForRoman and "We acknowledge you." Others simply stood in silence, eyes glued to their phones for updates. It's not just about wrestling anymore. Roman Reigns represents something bigger: loyalty, family, leadership. To see him broken, literally and symbolically, has left a gaping wound in the WWE community. Internally, WWE is scrambling. Plans for SummerSlam are reportedly in flux. Roman was scheduled for a major return segment next week that may now be postponed indefinitely. Sources claim creative writers are burning the midnight oil to rework long-term storylines that hinged on Roman's involvement. The Bloodline arc, already tense with Solo Sikoa's betrayal and Jacob Fatu's emergence, now stands at a dangerous crossroads. What complicates things further is the unresolved tension between Roman and Seth, a tension that dates back over a decade. From their time in the Shield to their respective championship runs, these two men have been friends, enemies, brothers, and rivals. But never like this. Never with real blood spilled. Never with hospital stretchers and police whisperings in the dark. The question now is not just whether Roman Reigns will return, but whether he even wants to. According to a backstage official who visited Roman at the hospital, he appeared devastated. Not just physically, but emotionally. "He looked at me and said, he was supposed to be my brother. That's when I realized, this isn't just a feud anymore. This is betrayal in its purest form." Meanwhile, WWE officials have begun reviewing all backstage footage. Some of the camera angles from the security feed have yet to be released to the public, but one frame reportedly shows Seth Rollins holding a steel chair, yelling something unintelligible as Roman crumples to the ground. WWE legal teams are debating whether to include this footage in future broadcasts or to lock it down indefinitely. Fans have already begun calling for accountability. Some demand Seth Rollins be suspended or fined. Others want a public apology. Still others believe this is a calculated heel turn gone too far. "This is not kayfabe," wrote one fan on Reddit. "This is real pain. You don't fake that kind of injury." Roman's face said everything. Back at the arena, Monday Night Raw continued, but something was missing. The usual roar of the crowd was muted. Promos felt hollow. Even the main event ended in confusion, with several superstars reportedly distracted by the night's earlier events. Cameras cut away more frequently than usual. Backstage interviews were cancelled. The production team was in damage control mode, and while the arena lights dimmed and fans filed out into the warm Phoenix night, Roman Reigns lay in a hospital bed across town, stitched, bruised, sedated. Alone. The tribal chief had fallen, not in a ring surrounded by 20,000 fans, but behind the scenes in a cold concrete hallway with no script, no bell, and no protection from the one man who used to have his back. As dawn breaks, WWE remains silent. No new statements. No new photos. But insiders say more images may surface in the coming hours. Graphic images. Images that show the full extent of the carnage left in the wake of a friendship turned violent. If released, these photos could redefine how fans view both Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. Because in those frames are more than bruises and blood. In those frames is the collapse of a legacy built on trust, and so we wait. For updates. For answers. For healing, but one thing is already clear. WWE will never be the same again. But while the world held its breath, WWE's inner circle was already in full crisis mode. A series of closed-door meetings were convened across multiple locations, Stamford headquarters, backstage at Raw, and even via secure video calls with executives overseas. This was not merely a superstar injury. This was a public relations earthquake. And the fallout wouldn't just impact next week's show, it threatened the very narrative architecture WWE had been carefully building for over 2 years. Triple H, now firmly in control of creative operations, was reportedly furious, not at the incident itself, but at the implications. "We built the bloodline on respect, legacy, emotional truth," one executive whispered. But now? "We're looking at lawsuits, potential suspensions, and a complete rewrite of SummerSlam's main event." The internal briefing revealed more than what had been publicly released. Security footage showed Seth and Roman meeting in the hallway after Roman exited an unscheduled conversation with Paul Heyman. In the grainy footage, Seth appears to step directly into Roman's path. Words are exchanged, at first calmly, then with increasing volume. Roman gestures, jabs a finger toward Seth's chest. Seth responds with a shove. Roman fires back with a forearm. The footage cuts to chaos, bodies colliding with walls, a lighting rig collapsing, Seth lifting the steel chair. Another video angle, reportedly from a nearby handheld camera being set up for a pre-tape, captured the moment Roman hit the floor. His head snapped back, making hard contact with the concrete. The chair never struck him. But it didn't need to. The damage was done. Blood was already pooling. And the roar in the production bay instantly fell into terrified silence. Multiple staff members called for medics. Some say Seth looked shaken afterward. Others claim he stormed off, muttering that Roman had pushed too far. When later asked by an internal WWE official to give a formal statement, Rollins allegedly refused, saying, "Get my lawyer." This silence only fueled the firestorm. Meanwhile, Roman's family began arriving at the hospital. First came Jimmy and Jey Uso, eyes wide with disbelief. They reportedly had to be escorted through a private entrance after being mobbed by paparazzi. Then Solo Sikoa appeared, alone, hooded, flanked by WWE security. No words were exchanged between him and the doctors. He simply stared at the closed door to Roman's room for several minutes, then walked away. A nurse later said he looked like a volcano about to erupt. Inside Roman's hospital suite, the scene was heavy with emotion. The tribal chief, the man who once conquered Brock Lesnar, unified world titles, and held WWE in the palm of his hand, now lay sedated under dim lighting, monitors beeping softly at his side. His stitches were clean. His vitals steady. But his soul? That remained in turmoil. A nurse described Roman waking briefly around 3:45 a.m., his voice raspy and barely audible. He asked for Seth. Then for his daughter. Then he closed his eyes again. Paul Heyman finally arrived at 4:10 a.m., reportedly carrying a duffel bag filled with personal items, Roman's phone, a pendant given to him by the Usos, and a journal he'd been writing in since his championship run began. Heyman was allowed into the room for exactly 10 minutes. According to a staff member who overheard fragments of the conversation, Paul whispered, "This shouldn't have happened. I failed you." Roman didn't reply. His breathing remained steady. But a single tear was seen tracing the line of stitches on his temple. The following morning, WWE scrambled to get ahead of the narrative. A sanitized version of events was shared with press outlets. Roman Reigns sustained a minor head injury backstage following a disagreement with another superstar. Out of an abundance of caution, he was transported to a medical facility for evaluation. He is awake, stable, and surrounded by family. But fans weren't buying it. The leaked photos, coupled with backstage witness reports and the clearly edited Raw broadcast, painted a far darker reality. And in that vacuum of official truth, speculation thrived. Was this truly just a backstage disagreement? Or was it the inevitable explosion of years of simmering resentment between two titans who never truly forgave each other? Old interviews were resurfaced. Comments from Seth in 2019, mocking Roman's leadership. Footage from Roman's 2020 return, where he vowed to never need Seth again. The narrative had been there all along, we just hadn't seen it. Or perhaps, we didn't want to. Even within WWE's locker room, the reactions were divided. One anonymous wrestler shared, "Roman's been carrying the company for 3 years. People forget he never took a break. He bled for this place. If Seth really snapped and took him out, that's not just a storyline betrayal. That's treason." Others defended Seth, arguing that Roman had grown too powerful, too controlling, dictating creative outcomes and marginalizing others. One rising star said, "We've all been walking on eggshells around Roman for months. Seth just did what most of us wish we could." That comment alone drew internal backlash, proof of how fractured the locker room had become in the tribal chief's absence. Meanwhile, medical experts assigned to Roman's care issued a new update: the patient remains under neurological observation. No signs of internal bleeding. Concussion severity, moderate. Estimated recovery time, pending further evaluation. In other words, no timeline for a return. For WWE, that spells chaos. Creative meetings that week were described as tense, bordering on explosive. With Roman out, Heyman distracted, and the Bloodline saga in shambles, WWE writers were left with only one clear certainty: SummerSlam would never be the same. The once-rumored main event, Roman Reigns vs. Seth Rollins in a last-stand match for the legacy of the Shield, is now off the table. Possibly forever. And yet, perhaps the most chilling detail emerged not from the arena or hospital, but from a leaked voice memo, allegedly sent from Roman to Heyman just 30 minutes before the fight. In the audio, Roman reportedly says, "Paul, if I don't come back from this, tell the world I forgave him. I just wanted my brother back." Let that sink in. Minutes before he was taken to the ground, bleeding, unconscious, Roman Reigns still held out hope. Not for vengeance, but for reconciliation. But now, that hope may be gone. Forever. At dawn, the world awoke not to a scripted WWE promo, but to a devastating reality. Every news outlet from ESPN to TMZ carried the same banner: Roman Reigns hospitalized after violent backstage fight with Seth Rollins. And beneath those headlines, the images, those searing, unforgettable images, continued to circulate, now burned into the minds of millions. Fans no longer speculated whether the fight was real. They knew it was. The pain in Roman's eyes, the blood trailing from his temple, the EMTs wheeling him away, this wasn't entertainment. This was a collapse. A betrayal. A war between brothers no longer bound by loyalty, but severed by something far deeper and more dangerous: broken trust. Inside the hospital, Roman's room had become something of a sanctuary, but not of peace. It was guarded by 2 members of WWE's private security team, along with medical staff under strict orders to restrict access. Roman remained sedated. Monitors continued their rhythmic beeping. The room was quiet, eerily so. And yet, in every corridor, whispered conversations painted a grim atmosphere. Nurses exchanged glances, having never seen such a high-profile patient arrive under such violent circumstances. Doctors, while maintaining professionalism, confided in one another about the delicate balance between medical duty and media chaos. One internal email circulated at 7:32 a.m. reads simply, "All patient records regarding Roman Reigns are to be marked confidential. No exceptions. Any breach will result in termination." Meanwhile, Seth Rollins was nowhere to be seen. Despite being the other half of this volatile story, he hadn't made any public statement. WWE officials confirmed he was escorted from the arena after Raw went off the air, flanked by 2 company representatives and his personal security. He did not stay for the talent debrief. He did not check on Roman. He did not speak to media. Instead, he was taken to a private residence in Scottsdale, where he has remained in complete lockdown. But reports suggest Seth is in turmoil. A member of his inner circle, speaking anonymously, said, "He hasn't spoken more than a few words since it happened. Just keeps replaying it over and over. He says he didn't mean for Roman to get hurt. That it wasn't supposed to go that far. But the photos say otherwise." WWE has since confirmed that additional surveillance footage from the hallway has been reviewed internally. It shows Roman being thrown against a stack of production crates. A loud metallic crash follows. Seth, shirt torn and breath heaving, stands over him, face twisted, lips moving, but the audio remains inaudible. Then he drops the steel chair, turns away, and storms off. There is no sign of remorse. No hesitation. No one checking if Roman is okay. Backstage officials who witnessed the incident firsthand have been instructed not to speak publicly. But that hasn't stopped the truth from leaking out in fragments. One longtime referee, visibly shaken, told a journalist off the record, "I've seen a lot in this business. A lot of drama. A lot of fights. But this wasn't just a fight. This was someone breaking." The question now being asked in every locker room across WWE is a simple one: has Seth Rollins finally gone too far? This isn't the first time Seth's intensity has caused concern. Over the years, his transformation from architect to visionary to messiah has been both praised and feared. He's a man driven by legacy, perfection, and control. But insiders say that over the last several months, something changed. The rise of Roman Reigns and the dominance of the Bloodline created a shadow too large for anyone, even Seth, to ignore. The titles, the power, the backstage influence, all of it had slowly slipped from Seth's grasp. And what started as competition soon turned to resentment. Those closest to Roman say he saw it coming. In private conversations, he'd expressed concern that Seth's obsession with reclaiming the spotlight was becoming unhealthy. "He's still my brother," Roman reportedly told Heyman weeks ago. "But I don't know if I can trust the man he's become." Now, it seems that warning was prophetic. Meanwhile, the Bloodline, already fractured by Solo Sikoa's rebellion and the emergence of Jacob Fatu, has entered complete disarray. With Roman sidelined, there is no clear leader. Jey Uso, still nursing injuries from a recent attack by Bronson Reed, has gone silent on social media. Jimmy Uso has not been seen publicly since Roman's hospitalization. And Solo? Solo was reportedly seen in the early morning hours at the Performance Center in Orlando, alone, pacing, smashing training dummies to pieces. One observer noted, "It's like the empire crumbled overnight. The head of the table is gone. And no one stepping up to take the chair." And then came the moment no one saw coming. At 10:12 a.m., WWE's official X, formerly Twitter, account posted an image that stunned the internet. A black and white still shot from security footage, Roman Reigns sitting against the wall, blood trailing from his temple, staring directly into the camera. The caption read, "This is not a storyline. This is not a performance. This is a man who gave everything for this company, and paid the price." #Justice for Roman. Within seconds, the post exploded. Tens of thousands of retweets. Over 1 million views in under 15 minutes. The image, bleak, powerful, and haunting, became a symbol of not just injury, but betrayal. That's when Seth finally broke his silence. In a short, 43-second video uploaded to his Instagram stories, Seth appeared sitting in darkness, a single desk lamp illuminating part of his face. His voice was low, cracking. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It got out of hand. I let my anger take over. And now, he's in a hospital bed because of me. I don't know what happens next. I just know I crossed a line." He didn't apologize, he didn't ask for forgiveness, he simply stared into the camera, eyes red, then ended the video. The WWE Universe erupted again, this time more divided than ever. Some fans demanded Seth's immediate suspension or termination. Others argued that this moment, raw, unscripted, painful, was proof of the blurred line between reality and wrestling. "This is what makes WWE real," one tweet read. "This is pain. This is history. This is human." But amid the chaos, one voice rose above the noise. Paul Heyman. At noon, Heyman held an impromptu press conference outside the hospital. Dressed in a solemn black suit, flanked by security, he stood before a sea of microphones and delivered the most emotional statement of his career. "I have stood beside Roman Reigns for years, not as his advocate, not as his wise man, but as someone who believed in him as a man, as a leader, and as the tribal chief. What happened last night was not scripted. It was not planned. It was not entertainment. It was a betrayal. It was an attack. And it was a tragedy." He paused, eyes glistening. "Roman Reigns is not just the face of WWE. He is the soul. And last night, that soul was shattered by someone who once called him brother. I won't speak for Roman. But I will speak to everyone listening. This is not over. And it never will be." He walked away without taking questions. As the press dispersed, one thing had become clear: the fallout from this incident is far from finished. What began as a brutal backstage fight has spiraled into something bigger, something irreversible. The Shield is broken. The Bloodline is leaderless. WWE's future is in flux. And Roman Reigns lies in a hospital bed, his future uncertain, his legacy under siege. But perhaps the most haunting question isn't whether Roman will return. It's whether, when he does, he'll be the same man at all. Across the wrestling world, silence gave way to tremors of reckoning. The incident no longer sat in isolation. It had become a trigger. WWE's global offices were now fielding calls from major networks, sponsors, and legal representatives, not just about what had happened, but what might come next. The fallout had gone nuclear. And at the epicenter of it all remained a man shrouded in bandages, flickering in and out of lucidity, lying in a private hospital room with the weight of an empire on his chest. Roman Reigns was stable but not whole. The concussion had left him disoriented. The wound on his temple had required 9 stitches. But doctors were more concerned with his mental state. A trauma specialist was brought in after nurses reported him whispering to shadows in the corner of his room, not in fear, but in confusion. He kept asking if the match had started yet, one nurse reported. He thought he was still backstage waiting to walk out. According to sources, WWE has placed Roman on an indefinite medical hiatus, but internally, they fear his absence could stretch far longer. And with that fear came something darker: vulnerability. For the first time in nearly 4 years, WWE had no tribal chief. No leader. No center of gravity. And nature, especially in the squared circle, abhors a vacuum. It didn't take long for others to move. By 1:30 p.m., Solo Sikoa, cold, stoic, unreadable, posted a cryptic message on his Instagram story. No caption. Just a blood-red silhouette of Roman's signature gauntlet, cracked down the center. Fans immediately began speculating: was Solo preparing to step in as the new tribal chief? Or was this a declaration of war, not against Seth, but against the structure that had allowed Roman to fall? And then came Jacob Fatu. Appearing live on WWE's digital show The Bunker, Jacob was unexpectedly pulled in by a satellite. He looked tired. Unshaven. His voice was low but calm. "When you come for family, you better be ready for family to come for you," he said. Seth Rollins didn't just hit a man. He tore down a bloodline. And we don't forget. The interview went viral. It was the first on-the-record statement from within the Bloodline's extended family. And it carried an unmistakable message: this wasn't over. That same evening, a leak hit Reddit, this time from someone claiming to be a production crew member. They posted a still frame that hadn't been publicly released: Roman Reigns, lying flat on the concrete, eyes closed, blood seeping beneath him in a perfect, terrible circle. The caption read, "This was the moment Seth walked away." The image, grainy and dim, spread like wildfire. Fans were furious. WWE was in panic mode. And legal teams reportedly sent cease and desist letters to any platform that hosted the image. But it was too late. The story had entered the bloodstream of the internet. And no amount of spin could remove the stain. Backstage, WWE morale had fractured. Veteran talent like Randy Orton and AJ Styles were reportedly disgusted, calling the incident a disgrace to the locker room code. Others, younger stars like Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, saw opportunity. With Roman out, championship paths shifted. Main event slots were suddenly available. The power dynamics were realigning, but through all the chaos, only one man remained completely silent: Seth Rollins. He hadn't shown up to SmackDown, Raw, or even rehearsals for upcoming promotional appearances. WWE had suspended him pending further review of the incident. But insiders say the move was more about optics than punishment. "They don't know what to do with him," one employee said. "He's too valuable to cut. Too toxic to push. They're paralyzed."